Hi, everybody. Adrian Fuentes here. Did you know that the Democrats of Greater Tucson has a website, thedgt.org, and if you subscribe, it's only 20 bucks. You can support this great weekly communication where folks get together. Sometimes there's candidates, sometimes folks like me pop on to help understand what's going on in the world. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, thedgt.org. Join up today.
Okay, Brian Johnson is here with us today. He's a 26-year resident of Pima County. His home is in the semi-rural community of Picture Rocks. He was born and grew up in Long Island, New York, went to college at the University of Vermont and East Stroudsburg State, where he obtained his BA degree. Brian has been a lifelong Democrat, having cast his first vote for president for Jimmy Carter in 1976. He has been a member of the Democrats for Picture Rocks chair in 2021, and he is also a member of the Tucson Mountain Association. Brian is running for Pima County Treasurer to ensure responsible management of public funds through transparency and a robust data system that's integrated with the assessor, recorder, and folks in the county finance department, who currently handle many of the treasurer's duty regarding property tax. He understands the need for the treasurer's office to play a meaningful role in our Pima County government, manage investments with a return that emphasizes values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate awareness. Brian brings 14 years professional experience in the county government to the table. Prior roles in the assessor's office and finance and risk management provide the expertise needed to navigate the complexities of property tax administration. His involvement in property tax litigation has educated him in the statutes governing the treasurer's responsibilities and limitations. Since leaving employment with the county, Brian has served as a Pima County appointee to the Arizona State Board of Equalization. Let's give a warm welcome to today's guest, Brian Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So let me thank you for that introduction and may explain a little bit of my background as to what knowledge and experience that I can actually bring to this office for the treasurer. And it's not that the treasurer's office under the last 50-something years of Republican basically under Republican treasurers has been doing anything wrong, but they've really diminished that office down to a point where basically all they do is transactions. And they collect the money, they disperse the money, and they just have, like, for example, one person who makes sure that the money that does get invested without any real consideration as to how this is being done or consideration of where they fit in with the rest of the county. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those things today and tell you how I feel about making some real significant changes to the treasurer's office that I think would better serve the people, the citizens of Pima County, and all citizens, not just property taxpayers, but also all the citizens of Pima County. So I want to begin about investments. Now, like I said, they have a person who just makes sure things get invested, and there really isn't very much consideration given to it. They use a certified brokerage firm, which they have to by law, and there are quite a few laws, statutes, as well as regulations that make sure that our public monies are kept safe. For example, investments can't be made in, like, for example, in corporate bonds that are not rated A1, or the company is not rated P1 in terms of its credit worthiness. That's important. And you can't, and investments can be no more than 5% of the total investment can actually go into one investment. So there is quite a few, rules, regulations, and stuff that keep the money safe. But nobody's ever really cared about where that money is being invested. And for example, I was pulled up the February investment report from the Treasurer's Office website, and I was really taking a look at, where those investments go. And when I looked at that, I'm seeing Chevron. We're investing part of our $1.3 billion of public monies that are being invested in Chevron. That's a fossil fuel company. And nobody's taking a look at, well, is there a possibility that we could invest that money better in maybe a company that with renewable energy? Okay. And then we also have investment in like Amazon. Now, Amazon, I mean, does Jeff Bezos have to get any richer? And they're union busting. Well, are we going to support our public monies for a company, invest in a company that is engaged in quite blatant union busting, as far as I can see? Other companies too. We have quite a bit of money invested in Wall Street with several issuances with J.P. Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley and so on. And we don't know exactly where all that money, we invested it into funds. There are different funds that go to different, that are managed, and we don't really have any idea where that money is how that money is being used. I think that it's okay. I mean, that's what normally gets done. But is that the responsible thing to do? And I think we can have a better approach to how that $1.3 billion is public money is invested. And one of the things that I would propose to do when I'm elected treasurer is to actually create a team. And I would like to have a team that shares a lot of the democratic values that I share, that all of you share as well. But I would really like to get some folks in there who are younger, who have more of a stake in what happens in the future on this planet and in our government and in our society as a whole. And so that's where I would like to see our public monies, I'd like to see them invested. And I'd like that input to say, okay, they can do the research. We can research those companies. We can research where we can safely invest that money, where it would still be liquid enough according to the statutes and the regulations. So we can find better places and to invest our money. So that's one of my big issues is our public investment. The other big issue I have with the way things are working, have been working with the county treasurer's office, and not that this is bad, because they've just focused in on making sure that they handle transactions. They don't think about the bigger picture. What happens? How does it really affect the average citizen if there is a problem? Now, like Joe mentioned in the introduction, I was on the State Board of Equalization. I was a hearing officer. I heard a lot of appeals, and some of them had to do with basically shouldn't have been appeals because they were simply problems because of processes, because something went wrong somewhere along the way. And I even saw the same thing when I did property tax litigation in the finance department for the county. So I try to think of a good example that might be really illustrate how things can go wrong, how we can be all doing the right thing but really failing our citizens. And I was just like saying, well, I was going through my brain thinking of, well, this case and that case and so on that I heard. And then on the news, and this is like a week and a half ago or so, when I'm thinking about the presentation here today, and all across the news it was this thing, oh, they're going to seize Trump's property, they're going to send the sheriff to seize property. And so that became a big buzzword. So I figured, oh, okay, let me give you a good example that may sound fun because it's about seizure, but it really wasn't fun. It was a real failure, I think, on the part of our county government. So I'll tell you the story. So this gentleman who had bought an acre of land with a manufactured home out in Everett Valley, and he retired there and he paid cash. And he thought life was going on great until he called one day the property tax hotline, and I was in the office that day when they asked me to take that call. And he was very upset and beside himself, and even to a point of almost being angry. A sheriff's deputy came up to his front door and started putting a notice on his front door that they were going to seize his property. The sheriff was going to seize his house for delinquent taxes. Okay, so now this gentleman is, like I said, very upset, and he insisted that he paid all his taxes. And you know why? And he wasn't getting any answers from the treasurer's office, or couldn't get any answers from the assessor's office. He called the property tax hotline, and he's looking for answers and what was going on. Why did he owe all these taxes? Actually, it turned out he owed 6 years of personal property taxes because his manufactured home wasn't affixed. And he never got a tax notice on that. It took me, I'm going to say, at least 3 hours trying to go through the assessor system, whatever I had rights to, the assessor system, the recorder's office, the tax assembly, and the finance department who actually sends out the tax bills, and just try to figure out where did we really fail this gentleman. And where it was that property tax, personal property tax bill was being sent off to somewhere in Colorado, probably somebody who owned that manufactured home at some point in life. And they said, well, I don't own this anymore. And they threw it in the trash. And there was no way that anybody in those different systems could ever track down what was going on with this gentleman. And here he is now 6 years later with a big bill to pay. And he would have to pay it because that's what the law is. And that's what happens with personal property. When you're delinquent on your taxes, the sheriff can seize your property and sell it to recoup the money for the county. So there were a lot of other instances. And at one point when I was working for the county, I made a recommendation that we go to an integrated data system that basically we could keep all the data together and make it accessible. Make data accessible. Not the assessor's office has their little system, their homegrown system, and the treasurer's office has their homegrown system, and everybody has their own little thing going on, which works fine for them, and they're all happy with it, but it doesn't work fine for the people. So I had made that recommendation when I was there, and this was over 5 years ago. I left in 2020, and so when I had made that recommendation, the treasurer said, no way. We're happy with what we're doing. And that's the attitude that has to change. We have to take a brand new look at what we're doing in our county government, and we need new people. Luckily, we have a new recorder from 2020. We also have a new assessor from 2020. And now we need a new treasurer, because we have to make this system work better for people. And once we get the data in a way that we can actually look at it, we can prevent problems happening. We can see where issues are going on. And when that property tax goes delinquent for that manufactured home somewhere, we can see where that problem is very quickly, inform and notice, and not let it go 6 years until we have to have the sheriff deputy go out there and put a notice on his door. Okay. And I want to touch on another thing, why we need to have a better information, because we do live in an information society, and we do rely on that information. And sometimes we are all affected by misinformation. And there's a lot of misinformation out there in the world, as we all know. And sometimes it has some real effects. During the course of my campaigning and to gather signatures, I went to a lot of events where there were folks from all over the county, but they were voters, not necessarily specifically homeowners or property owners. So I would go to, like, Martin Luther King Day rally. I was at the Cesar Chavez rally. I was there was an ACLU event for LGBTQ rights, and I'm talking to people there, and they're not necessarily, like I said, all property owners. And I can tell you that from 3 different events and 5 different people, when I took down my notes about what I heard, what I discussed with people, one of the common things that was said, like I said, by 5 different people at 3 different events on 3 different days, was, my rents have gone up considerably, and they're telling me it's because you guys are charging more in property taxes. Okay, the property taxes, they said, have gone up 25, 30%, and that's why they have to pass that on to me, and that's why I'm being charged all this extra rent. Well, that's not true. That is absolutely not true, because if you really look, and that information were made available, accessible, and if it was transparent, where anybody could go and see, what is this apartment building? What were they paying in taxes? Because there are actually constraints. There are statutes, there's constraints. There was a Prop 117 that passed that limited that your taxable value can't increase more than 5% a year, even if your full cash value increases 25, 30%. But they're blaming it on these very greedy, you've heard of greedflation, that's what it is. These very greedy, apartment owners were going and saying, well, I have to charge you 25% more or 30% more because I have to pay the taxes on it. And that's not right either. So I think we need to have a robust system where we have the data integrated, where we can make it even accessible to the public, that they can see it, and so that we can not only prevent problems like the gentleman with the manufactured home, but also dispel a lot of this misinformation that's going on out there in the world. So those are pretty much my goals, what I would like to do to transform the Treasurer's Office, to make it better, to make it more of a service, a real government agency that's a public service to the citizens, and that and that we are really there to serve our citizens, not there just to make sure we're collecting a paycheck and getting some job done that we're supposed to do. So that's pretty much where I'm at. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to.
So you mentioned now the county's invested heavily. I think it was like 1.2 billion in Chevron.
No, it's not. Okay, so the total amount of public funds that are invested is 1.3 billion.
Okay.
Now, and I did say that you can't put more than 5% into any one particular investment. And I will say that a good chunk of that is not really, it's not discretionarily managed by the treasurer's office, because I'm going to say maybe a good third of that 1.3 billion is actually in what they call the local government investment pool. So that's sort of managed outside the discretion of the treasurer. But for example, Chevron, let me look here on this list. Chevron, we have about 3.9 million invested.
Okay. So have you thought about an investment strategy for that 3.9 million that you would shift to?
Well, that's what I was saying I would like to do. I'd like to put together a team that will develop that strategy and develop policies. And I want to have a team with younger people on it, people who have a stake in the future, and let them be the ones who are going to make the advice, the proposals, and so on. Right.
Oh, okay. Mike has his hand up. Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I got a couple actually, but I will limit myself to one for now. And that is, we got an appointment coming up because Mr. Ford, or Ms. Ford rather, resigned, and so there's going to be a board of supervisors appointment to the treasurer's seat. Do you have a preferred person? Does it have to be a member of the Republican Party like Ms. Ford?
Well, actually, okay, so there are 3 applicants so far. That was closed off. They had to have applied by last Friday. And so now we know that there are 3 applicants. One of them, of course, is Chris Ackerley, who's the current chief deputy, who is Beth Ford's basically appointed successor, right? Mm-hmm. But he's a candidate. He's a candidate. He would be, I would be, or I'm running in a primary against Sammy Hamid, either Sammy Hamid or myself, or it's going to have to face him in November. But other than that, there are other 2 really excellent applicants there. Ray Carroll, who's one who was a former supervisor.
We all know Sugar Ray.
Yeah, and I know Ray from, especially from when I was working in the county with SCIU. I was very active in the union, and since I had worked downtown, I did a lot of the work for the union with the supervisors because I was right there, and I got to know Ray pretty well. And he may be a Republican, but he's a good guy, Republican. Mm-hmm. So I really like Ray. And then the other person is Patty Davidson. Now, Patty Davidson was the chief deputy treasurer for 14 years under Beth Ford. She obviously knows that office in and out. And I will say, and I knew Patty from when I worked in county finance. And so when I was even thinking of running for this office, she was one of the first phone calls I made. I said, Patty, what do you think? You know, and if anybody could run that office, it's definitely Patty Davidson. So, so I think that they're really 2 very excellent people besides Chris Ackerley, who's the candidate for November. So I'm hoping they decide to pick either Patty or Ray Carroll. So
Cool, thanks.
yeah.
My second question would be about that pooled discretionary fund for the county. You said that about a third of our money is in that pooled fund. Who actually makes the decisions about how to invest that money?
I haven't really investigated a lot of that. I think some of it is sort of regulated through the state treasurer's office, because it is being pulled from all different sources of local governments. And I think they're the ones. I haven't gotten fully into investigating where how that money is actually being managed. It's one of my tasks to get into that, but I do know that it's not necessarily within the county treasurer's discretion to how that money is invested. So that would not be the priority, because unless somehow it can get in there and influence how that is done. Right. So.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Well, Susie, welcome, Susie. You have a question.
Yes, it's so good to have you here. And it sounds like you've been paying a lot of attention to this, which is just great to hear. But I was wondering, have you spoken with the recorder and the assessor about, how you would handle things in a friendlier manner than just being isolated departments?
Yes. Okay. So, yeah, I can explain that. And it's not that they're already starting to move into an integrated system. And actually initiated with the recorder. Okay. The recorder went to, so let me first throw a little history. So back in 2015, when I was working in the finance department, we had different problems. I had investigated some of these software vendors that provided basically these government software structures. And there were 3 that were prominent in Arizona already at that point. And one of them was Tyler Technologies. And of course, the treasurer and even the assessor at that time in 2015 were going to have nothing to do with it. So it kind of just went forgotten about. But a couple of years ago, in order to, I think, to actually, because the recorder has a very big challenge, the recorder and the assessor had a big challenge with deed fraud, which is a national problem, where people are actually, if you own your property outright and they manage to steal your property out through getting your deed somehow. And so this one company, Tyler Technologies, has integrated in their software ways to detect how that's happening and so on. And our Pima County recorder was the first one to go for it. And so she basically brought that company's system in, and the assessor's been using it as well. And I think it's an excellent company, and they have excellent software, and I would continue just what they've been doing already. So does that answer your question a little bit about that? Okay.
Yep. Sounds like it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Mike, do we have anything in the chat room?
Not thus far, but I do have another question if nobody minds.
Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned a few things about ESG and DEI, and I was wondering if you are expecting ESG and DEI to be major topics of attack during the campaign, and how you're going to defend your office's use of ESG and DEI, if in fact you will, as a method of superior security for our investments.
Okay, so I do know that our state treasurer is making many of those attacks so far. Um, um, you know, our treasurer Yee, who's our state treasurer, who's been coming out vocal, because that's sort of a natural thing for these MAGA folks to do. Okay, to create these culture wars. So they're trying to even go through different state treasuries to say, no, you can't invest in a company that has good DEI policies because we don't believe that that should be a criteria, whatever. On the local level, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that they know. Our current treasurer really does not, and the chief deputy, who will be my opponent, does not really have invested themselves in really paying attention to this. Like I said, when I talked to Patty Davidson, who had been chief deputy for a long time, they have one person there who basically his job is to make sure that the money does get invested. It's just transactional. There's no thought about it whatsoever. So I'm not going to really expect that on local level in this race. If it comes up, that's great. That'll make news, and that'll give me an opportunity to go out there and tell people, hey, you know, we need to have government that supports our values as a people. And if we want we have diversity in our society, and why don't we support that in our businesses, and why don't we support that in our investments? So.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but companies that pay attention to ESG and DI have superior returns over time.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, great question, Mike. Any other questions?
Susie Anderson just raised her hand again.
Susie.
Okay. I was just wondering, do you have any ideas for whom you would have as far as young people coming in on your staff? Have you worked with some young people that you know would be valuable? Do you expect mass quitting if you get to be treasurer because they don't like your policies and they're so indebted to Ford? Anyway, that's kind of, I was wondering if you had ideas on whom you would take into that office.
Okay, so I've run into a few people who were former employees in the treasurer's office. Some of them are now in the assessor's office because they had no career path in the treasurer's office the way it's being run now, and some younger people, and I got to know them a little bit. Like I said, I was a hearing officer for the State Board of Equalization, and they were working for the assessor's office, so I got to hear how they presented themselves and their ideas and the quality of their work. So there are people there, but I would really kind of follow up on one of the one thing that the county government does, the county has done, is where they've gone and looked to create internships. They've gone to the U of A, and I'm sure if once I can build a real desire to want to work at the treasurer's office for younger people and be able to present that to folks, to younger people at the university, I think that might entice them to really get involved in the local government, and then passing forward. Now, I'm not at an age where I'm going to be here for 6 terms like that's for. So, so that's not going to happen. And I really want to try to create the opportunity to build that office for the future. And it's not going to be a future with me. It's going to be a future with somebody else and other people. But I want to get them in there and give them that opportunity. So that's my plan on that.
Okay, Andrea Kennedy has a question for you.
Thanks for coming today, Brian. Actually, 2 questions popped up for me. I know there are investment firms that specifically have socially conscious companies to invest in. Have you looked into any of those? And you're talking about the assessor's office being more responsive to taxpayers' needs. My experience with bureaucracy is that the people in the office really are the ones who can help out with that. They can be indifferent or they can be really helpful. Sometimes in spite of the system they have to work under. Is the assessor's office are the people there just kind of, are they unhelpful? Are they hard to reach? Is that a problem you see there?
No,
And how would you change it if it is?
No. Actually, I see they're very, very good people, and they have a number of young people there who are really, like I said, I've had to deal with them probably from the other end of the thing, being a hearing officer and making decisions on when they on appeals where they have to defend their things. I've gotten to see really good quality work out of them, and I think they're doing well. They really do have a real sense of wanting to serve and to be helpful. And but we don't have that in the treasurer's office right now, and that really needs to change there. Mostly because they don't know. And nobody has given them the opportunity to know better and to care. And I think it's going to be a change of culture in that treasurer's office, so that when you call the treasurer's office and you say, oh, well, what's this on my property tax statement? You'll get an answer, right? Somebody will be able to explain it to you. And if they have a question about whatever, that, can be answered. Now, I mean, people can call and complain that their taxes are too high or whatever, but that's not really ever really an issue once you explain to them where the money goes. Why do you have 10, 12 different things there on your, that's my bird in the background, I'm sorry. I thought I had gave him enough food to keep him shut up, but he's not. So yeah, so anyway, so I think we just need a change of culture, so that in the treasurer's office now, so that we can be more helpful to people. And if we have information at our fingertips, that helps. A lot of times people don't seem helpful because they have no way of knowing. They can't answer your question, right? So
Brian, I meant treasurer, but it came out assessor because the software is old. But I think.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, we have a question from Pat Weedoff.
Hi there, thank you. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
I've got a question about dispelling the myth that Republicans know how to work finances better, and they're better in economics. Because I've heard over the years, not necessarily recently, well, yeah, vote again for Beth Board. She does a great job. She does a good job. And so I think there's still that kind of myth out there about Republicans knowing how to do things better when it comes to, like, say, the Pima County Treasurer.
Yeah, yeah, and that's been a problem. That was a very, very big consideration when I thought about this. But the fact that it is going to be an open office, that's going to be, and hopefully it will be an open office, that the Board of Supervisors don't appoint an interim, that's going to have the I next to their name on the ballot. And so yeah, there is this myth that Republicans somehow seem to do better with money, but we all know that they don't, right? They're horrible with money. And one of the reasons they're horrible about it is because I guess they don't understand how accounting works. You always have two columns, the money coming in and the money going out, right? But they don't believe in taxes, so they don't even want to look at that column where the money's coming in. So that's why they're so horrible at it. And but so how do we dispel that? Hopefully we can get a really good campaign going. That's why I hope I win the primary. I know I have the knowledge background to really go head to head with Chris Ackerley, who's going to be the Republican candidate, and who has no background whatsoever. He's a school teacher, very honorable profession, but he's only been there for 2 years, and he's learning really what they're not doing. He doesn't understand a lot of the other stuff that they should be doing. So I hopefully that can get out there and we can dispel that myth. And as long as there's no I next to somebody's name on that ballot in November, I think we have a good shot at it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Larry Bodine wants to know what kind of bird you have.
The one that's screaming is a Goffin cockatoo, and I also have a blue and gold macaw.
Oh, beautiful birds. You should bring them on camera.
Yeah, I should.
Lucy Messi wants to highlight the fact that our state has a $1.7 billion deficit, indicating that Republicans maybe aren't so great about managing money.
Right.
I have a question about what's the historical rate of return on our investments here in Pima County, and what kind of tolerance of risk is allowed, and can we improve on that rate at all?
Okay. The rate of return has been basically running recently, and this is over the course of time because interest rates have changed quite a bit in the last few years. Yeah. But the rate of return has been 4.6% overall.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad considering that a good amount of that money is also in U.S. Treasury and funds and things like that. So the 4.6 isn't that bad, but okay, so let me just go over a few of the strict rules, and some of these are statutory, some of these are regulatory that come down from the state. For example, you can't, a county treasurer cannot invest in anything that is rated by a national rating company, for example, that is less than A1 in terms of their market issuance rating, or in terms of their credit rating of a P1. Okay, so it's not like you can go day trading and try to find the hottest steel out there. You know what I mean? The big thing that just doesn't happen. And I did mention that you can't put more than 5% into any one fund or investment. So it's not. So there has to be some kind of diversity, and there it is allowed, but even our treasurer doesn't really get involved in anything that's credit risky, or like repurchase agreements or anything like that. So, and I would stay away from those as well. And so the actual function, the actual mechanics of how this has been going fine. It really has. I'm not going to say anything. It's just where that money is invested is my issue. Okay, not how, not necessarily how it's being invested. It's where it's invested.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there a role for the county treasurer to be investing locally? I mean, does it make sense to invest in like local bond issues if they're of sufficient credit rating?
Yes, I think that makes a lot. Yes, I think that would be. I think that's something we need to look at. Why should we be investing in Wall Street? J.P. Morgan Chase. Why can't we start looking at some of our? I have talked to several people in the investment field. I haven't. I've just been basically getting as much information as I can, and there was even so there are actually local. There are folks locally who do. There are investment funds that are focused here, right here in Pima County, that we can actually, look at. Rather than going to like for Wall Street or whatever. And as long as I think that they're actually helping our economy and they're helping us here, then I think that is a great way to go. Yes. So.
What a great program today. We all learned a lot, and let's give Brian a big round of applause for being here today.
Thanks, Brian.
Hey everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. As all of you know, Arizona Democrats have had a lot of important wins over the last few years. We won 2 U.S. Senate races, and we delivered Arizona's electoral votes to President Biden and Vice President Harris. We elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and Attorney General Chris Mays. Now, those elections were close, and our victories mattered. Arizona Democrats from the federal to the local level have delivered real results for our state on critical issues like combating climate change, lowering prescription drug costs, protecting the right to vote, and preventing more restrictions on abortion access. The Democrats of Greater Tucson offers the opportunity to hear from elected officials and candidates about that important work and the issues that matter to them. That information will be invaluable as Arizonans head to the polls. So this election cycle, whether you're signing up to knock doors, make phone calls, or joining the Democrats of Greater Tucson to hear from and speak to Democrats in our area, please know that your voice matters and we need you on this team. Thank you.